Hi, this is Julie Cooper, half of the duo, bringing you the regular series podcast, Kendall and Cooper Talk Mysteries. I'm a thriller writer, and Wendy is a cozy writer, and we have a very special guest today that I know Wendy's extremely excited to introduce. But first, just a quick thanks to my brother Christopher Squires for his intro music, A Man in the Panama Hat, his original composition and performance. Over to you, Wendy.
I am cozy mystery crazy, but I love all mysteries. Wendy Kendall here, and I'm saying just do it. With acknowledgments to Nike, our guest has said in the past that this has also been her writing philosophy. Just do it. Just write. Sit down, sip a little Diet Coke, develop a story outline, and then just keep chipping away at the writing. This lady and her writing exude energy and life, determination and fun, and her vibrant spirit spills over into her characters and her readers. I agree with this succinct philosophy. I say, as either a reader or a writer, jump into the story with both feet and no hesitation. Take with you the knowledge, imagination, and talents that you have and see where it will take you. Learn and enjoy as you go. So right now, I'm as giddy as a 13-year-old sneaking champagne at a family wedding reception. I get to introduce one of my personal heroes who I've admired from afar for many years. Laura Childs is the pseudonym used by Gerry Schmitt, who's the New York Times best-selling author of over 40 mysteries, and just released Pico Most Poison, the 18th in her Cozy Tea Shop series, my personal favorite series, plus her other cozy series, the Scrapbooking Mysteries and the Cackleberry Club. And then, tossing the pseudonym aside, she's authored the Afton Tangler Thrillers series, starting with Little Girl Gone. And the next in the series, Shadow Girl, is available August 1st. Here's words I have always hoped to say. Welcome, Laura Childs, Gerry Schmitt.
Oh my goodness, that's an amazing introduction. Thank you so much, Wendy. Thank you, Julie. It is an absolute thrill to be here. You know, you interviewed my cousin, Leslie Butowitz, a few months ago. So I feel like I'm here kind of carrying the family torch today. You remember Leslie?
Oh, absolutely. That was
Yes.
Isn't she a hoot?
That was so much fun. And I got to meet her. I got to meet her in person when she came to Seattle area on a book signing.
On a book tour?
Thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that was wonderful. Yeah, that was really fun too.
Yeah. She's really something. Did you know we were cousins?
She told me that. Yeah.
Oh, she told you? Oh, okay.
Well,
okay. Here I thought I was, letting the cat out of the bag here.
Well, for our listeners, you probably are. But she told us that later because I was so excited that we got to interview her. And then icing on the cake, she says, "Oh, did you know?"
Oh, okay. Good for her.
So it was great.
Oh, good.
I have a question for you, Gerry, keeping with our theme of just do it. We're really excited to hear what you're working on now, and I suspect it may be a new book coming out.
Well, as you might guess, with 40 books under my belt, I'm kind of an obsessive-compulsive writer. So I'm usually working on 2 or 3 different books at once. And right now, I am happy to say, is no exception. Last week, I put the finishing touches on Plum Tea Crazy, which is going to be the new tea shop mystery. Yes. Right, which will come out next year, 2018. I'm also working on Glitter Bomb, which is the next scrapbooking mystery. And then there's a book called Eggs on Ice, which is my new Cackleberry Club mystery. I have no idea what Eggs on Ice means, but I think it sounds kind of funky. So I think I'm going to go with it.
I'm so excited.
Sounds like great fun.
Yeah. Now, I got a couple more they're kind of on the down low. I'm working on outlines for a domestic thriller called Her Frantic Heart, as well as another cozy series called The Hummingbird Inn Mysteries. And the Hummingbird Inn series would be set in Carmel, California, just because it's such a charming, fun little place.
Wow.
Oh, one of my favorite places on earth. Oh.
Yeah. I just got back from there. I was there 2 weeks ago. Yeah, my husband, Dr. Bob, and I go out there every year and kind of hang out.
It's the best place to hang out, truly.
Oh,
And
wow.
I also heard a rumor, Gerry, of a possible Hallmark deal on the Tea Shop series. Is there something you can spill for us on that?
Well, that's kind of a crazy thing. In the past 10 years, the Tea Shop Mysteries have been optioned by 4 different production companies. Now, they haven't been put into production yet, but you never know. On the other hand, it could come boomeranging back to me. I don't know. We'll see. I think it'll be perfect for the Hallmark Mystery Channel.
It would.
Oh, I think so
Yeah.
too. We'll keep our fingers crossed and hope they can stay the course and
Thank you.
bring it to
Thank
production.
You. Yeah. Oh, I hope they do
Absolutely.
too. It'll be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would definitely, it's a perfect fit. Well, can you talk a little bit about your writing process for jump-starting a new mystery with what I've heard you say is a what-if factor?
Right, the what if factor. Yeah, that's kind of a notion, that's one notion or question that kickstarts your entire book and then keeps it moving in relatively high gear. I'm not a big believer in pages and pages of build-up. For me, the what if factor always happens in the very first chapter. For example, in my most recent book, Pico Moist Poison, the what if factor asks, what if you held a fancy tea party and invited all the rich socialites in Charleston, and then some poor person was poisoned to death? But the thing about the what if factor is it can be almost anything. It can be, what if a police detective has to solve a series of brutal crimes? What if, for instance, a young boy is driven to rescue a lion or a tiger from a bad situation in a circus? What if a woman tries to find her husband's killer so she can exact retribution by killing him? You just have to make your what if factor crisp and compelling. And I found out that if it's ripped from today's headlines, so much the better.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Well, I feel like your cozies have been groundbreaking for this mystery subgenre. And I'm wondering if part of what sets them apart is your view of them, calling them a thrillsy story. That's your invention of a hybrid cozy thriller, sort of like a hybrid Wendy-Julie combo.
There you go. And caffeinated at that.
This cozy thriller, it speaks in particular to the female protagonists and then also the crimes. So can you tell us a little bit about this thrillsy niche that you've carved out?
Yeah, the thrillsy is something that I kind of invented myself about a dozen or so years ago. I decided that cozy mysteries were far too tame and a little bit too formulaic. And if I was going to make a name for myself, have any success at all, I'd have to tinker with the genre. So I started writing what I call a thrillsy, and it really is a cross-pollinated hybrid that's both cozy and a thriller. Now, it's a cozy in that my protagonist is usually a smart, slightly nosy amateur sleuth who gets pulled, think of Theodosia and Carmela, everyone. They get pulled into these highly unpredictable situations. Following the cozy code of ethics that all cozy writers have kind of established, there's no rough language or gratuitous violence. But then I do introduce the thriller part by creating a slightly edgier plot with multiple plot lines and then really fast pacing.
Yeah.
And just like a typical thriller, I always start off with a bang in the very first chapter.
Yes, that's what
Cars
you do.
crashing through, cars crashing through windows, storms and fires, dead bodies sloshing out of wine barrels, whatever I can think of that's really crazy, okay? Then what I do is I follow up the thrillers with the thriller writer's rule of thumb that incorporates 3 more disasters and a huge ending. So I end up writing a cozy book, a cozy mystery, with really amped up action and a breakneck pace. And thank goodness It seems to work.
It really works. Really works.
Thank you. Thank you.
Julie, have you got somebody in your room with you?
No, I have a printer that's haunted.
Okay,
So sorry.
that's okay.
Trust me when I say I have no control over
I thought
this
you were jumping in your
device.
car and slamming the door and you're going to get out of here.
I tried to shut it off, so I'm hoping we don't have to hear it again. But
Okay, thank you. I think the answer did come through loud and clear. So just to let our listeners know, no more problems. So, oh, okay. So Laura, I was so happy to be back with my friends in historic Charleston as I read your new Pico Most Poison. For example, who else but wonderful Drayton is going to say,
Yes.
I have to quote him. So he says thoughtfully, I mean, everything happened so fast. It was like some bizarre art film with too many jump cuts. One minute I was striding along, playing a snatch of Vivaldi in my head, and the next thing I know, it's just only Drayton. And I wish I could go on, but I can't give away what happens because for the readers. But you're going to love it. You're going to love it. So tell me about how does the thrill when you sit down to write your 18th Tea Shop mystery compare to your feelings when you sat down to write that first one?
Oh, there's no thrill. I'm just incredibly worried.
Oh.
I worry about, yeah, I am. I worry about finding an exciting theme that I can kind of weave throughout the story. I worry about the best way to dump that dead body in the very first chapter. I worry about maintaining a frantic pace that I can really believe keeps my readers up late into the night when they should be getting their beauty sleep. Basically, I worry about every book every time. It's relentless. It never lets up.
Wow.
There's no thrill. It's just worry. It's paranoia. I think most writers feel that way. You're both writers. You probably feel that way.
I definitely do.
Well, there you go.
Yes.
See?
That gives me hope that I might be on the right track.
Oh, you're on the right track. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you talked about it just a little bit, but in the opening, wonderful Theodosia for this Pico book takes us along with her to a Charleston rat tea. It's so funny. As I was reading, my imagination had a great time with the descriptions. How did you hear about rat teas, and what is it in the writing of social parties that it's most important for a writer to do so that the reader can visualize the people, surroundings, and humor without kind of getting lost in the scene?
Yeah, rat teas. I'm sure all our listeners are kind of scratching their head going, what the heck is a rat tea? Well, they actually existed in Charleston. Apparently, right around World War II, there was this rather large infestation of rats in Charleston. And the city fathers encouraged everyone to create rat bombs. Now, these were like tiny little bits of poison, rat poison, wrapped up in paper. Now, the very strange thing is that the society ladies staged what they called rat teas, very fancy teas, as a way to increase awareness of this problem. Now, when I heard about this rat tea, when I did research and found out about rat teas, I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful to have one of today's society doyens stage a sort of madcap homage to this bizarre custom? And that, of course, led to my writing of Pico Most Poison. Then it was only logical that one of the guests in this fancy tea would be poisoned and die a horrible, but it's a very colorful death, too.
Oh, yes.
Now, yes. Yes, it goes on and on and on. Now, as far as staging that kind of an elaborate scene, a death scene, you kind of have to be careful to give an overall description of a fancy tea party, but you can't introduce too many characters. It gets very confusing for the reader. Mm-hmm. But I think that once you read the first few pages of Pico Most Poison, where I describe the servers who are wearing pink military-style jackets and giant plush white rat heads on their own heads, you're kind of amused and you get pulled right into the story.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
Yeah. And you do, really. I mean, what a strange thing.
You really do.
I based them on the rats in the the Nutcracker. You know, they have the
Oh,
dancing rats in there.
that's
Yeah.
what I visualized when
Yeah,
you started
right, exactly.
talking
They've
about
got
that.
like Napoleonic uniforms and these big rat heads, and they're
Yeah.
dancing. Only these guys aren't dancing; they're serving tea, very properly, with
Huh.
little furry gloves, you know, like paws.
Well, like you said, cozies have certainly evolved since Agatha Christie and Dorothy L. Sayers and the rules of fair play and all that you sort of touched on. Um, the cozy genre sort of resurfaced again in the late 20th century. What do you see? And then now it's real popular again. What do you see as the crucial ingredients for today's contemporary cozy reader?
Yeah, you know, I think character is probably the most important thing. You need to have a main character that readers will really like and identify with. Now, it's okay if that character is flawed. I mean, they don't have to be perfect. They just have to have a moral compass, because that's what pretty much drives the whole mystery. Your character is angry or outraged or even upset and takes up the cause of finding the killer and solving the mystery. Of course, you have to have that engaging plot line and an exciting story, too. The thing is, you're writing to entertain readers. The entertainment factor is your main goal. I always have to kind of chuckle to myself when I hear authors talk about walking into a Barnes & Noble and they're worrying about the huge number of books that they have to compete against.
Mm-hmm.
What they don't seem to realize is that books compete with everything these days. Movies, TV, the internet, shopping centers, baseball games, football games, gambling casinos, NASCAR racing, everything. So you better have good characters and a heck of a good story.
Wow, that's a really good point. Yeah, that the broader impacts. Wow,
Yeah.
interesting.
And you know, 20 years ago, we didn't have this.
No, that's right.
No,
True.
no. Books weren't competing on that kind of level.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's crazy.
your characters have certainly stood the test of time in the hearts of your readers, and they have engaging and very different perspectives. I think that they exhibit three characteristics that I think are big strengths. They care about each other, they have common sense, and they can laugh at themselves. So when I think about like Theodosia, Drayton, Haley, they feel like real people to me, but they started out as an idea in your imagination. So how did you take that and flesh it out from that initial spark and then keep those characters interesting and fresh now 18 books later?
Yeah, in a way, it's actually easier now to write about, you know, Theodosia and Carmela and Drayton and everyone, because the more books I write, the more developed all those characters have become. They're kind of like old friends now, so I almost depend on them. There's kind of this symbiosis thing going on. They kind of feed my inspiration and take the writing to kind of new and different places. Thank goodness for that. And the rest of my characters, I tell you, it's just, I have so much fun writing characters. I always think of it as people stuck in an elevator, and they're all kind of shoving each other around and mumbling, and I'm the one out there with the crowbar just trying to pry it open and let all those characters come streaming out. Because that's where they come from. They just come streaming out of my imagination.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Well, now, when do you figure out how to plant the clues? Do you do that as you're outlining, as you write, or is it afterwards in the rewrite?
Oh, I always do it when I'm outlining. I start my outline. Yeah, always, yeah. I'm a very careful outliner. I start my outline on a really big sheet of paper, and I jot out notes, usually for the murder scene in the very first chapter, and then the big conclusion in my final chapter. Now, when I do the outline, I always figure you can wrap up a mystery in, you know, between 6 and 8 days. That way, it keeps your pace up. So at the top of the paper, I just write down Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. You know, just take however many days I want it to be. Then I start kind of adding different scenes, and the scenes are generally where my protagonist, my Theodosia or my Carmela, kind of start to rub elbows with my suspects as well as my killer. Because you don't want to bring anybody in at the very end, you know. They have to be along in the story. Okay. But with that outline, it gives me a number of opportunities where I can sprinkle in the clues along with a few red herrings. I also color code all of my suspects. So I can glance, at a glance, I can say, oh, Theodosia hasn't seen the suspect for 2 or 3 days. I better put him into a scene, on the day when, his little color doesn't appear, on my outline. Now, when my paper outline starts to feel fairly gelled, then I transfer it to my computer. I tighten it up. In fact, I tighten it up pretty good. It goes to about 80 pages.
Oh my gosh! Your outline is 80 pages?
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
It
Okay.
is. My outline's 80 pages.
Oh.
That's my second outline. First is on a big sheet of paper, then it goes to the computer. Yeah, and the outline it's scenes that could be happening, it's snippets of dialogue, it's just crazy things I might want to put in, things like that.
Yeah.
But it's 80 pages. When I have about 80, I go back to chapter 1, and I write it straight through. There's no drafts, there's no versions, or no revisions. I just go all the way straight through.
Got it. That's awesome. Oh, wow.
I think it's my training in advertising, doing all my ad writing. You never have a chance to go back and look at stuff. You just bang it out. I think, like I was telling you, sometimes you're on the airplane going out to the West Coast and you're writing the TV script as you're flying.
Yeah.
Working on the fly. I guess that's where the term came from, huh?
Nice.
Oh.
Well, we talked a little bit about rules, and now I want to ask you, because I think there are times when rules can be broken, especially by somebody who understands the rules. So is there a time when you broke a writing rule and it kind of led you to something that you ended up, you're really proud of?
Yeah, I break a lot of rules, and I really believe the one rule every writer should break is that old standby, write what you know about. That just doesn't work anymore. Okay?
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. What author do we know that's intimately familiar with serial killers or outer space, right, or talking dogs, or or unicorns, or castles in mythical lands, or schools for wizards or something like that? I mean, if I'd followed that rule, I would be writing about what it's like to run an ad agency, because that's what I did for 20 years. And when you think about it, Matt Weiner, who created the TV series Mad Men, he never did work in an ad agency.
Oh,
So he didn't follow the rule either about write what you know about. He just found a compelling idea. That's what I try to do. Yeah.
Compelling idea. I love
A
that.
compelling idea. Yeah, I've never been in the middle of a smash and grab, which is what happens in one of my books. But hey, I can figure it out. I did some research. I found out that one happened in the south of France, and they took all the Chanel and Dior bags, and I thought, say now, that's kind of cool. So I put it in my book.
The locations of each of your book series are so vivid and unique, as if creating another character from the location, and they read as if they're integral to the action. So like the tea shop mysteries in Charleston, the scrapbooking mysteries New Orleans, Cackleberry in the Midwest, that one's kind of a fictional town, and then the Afton Tangler series in the Twin Cities. So when you do this, which came first, the location or the mystery series? And how is it? Yeah.
Yeah, it worked a couple different ways. For the tea shop mystery, the location came first, Charleston, South Carolina. Charleston is home to the oldest tea plantation in America. In fact, it dates back to the Revolutionary War. So I thought, say, that's going to make a perfect locale for Theodosia and Drayton to live and work and have a lovely little tea shop, the Indigo Tea Shop.
Makes sense.
Plus, Charleston is one of those old cities. It's kind of like Boston. It's very old, pre-Revolutionary War, filled with history and mystery and lots of old families with skeletons in the attic. As far as the scrapbooking mysteries, I had just visited New Orleans. My husband had the proverbial army buddy down there, and we went down to visit him, and it was during Mardi Gras. So we got to go in the float dens, we got to go to the wrecks and the Comus balls, all through the French Quarter, visited the above-ground cemeteries, and I just loved that easy come, easy go atmosphere. So that locale for the scrapbook mysteries was kind of a no-brainer. Yeah. For the Cackleberry Club mysteries, I ran across on the internet an old photo of a gas station that had been turned into a cute little cafe, and for some reason I just couldn't get that image out of my head. I started spinning these wild stories about 3 women who could be the proprietors of that cafe. So one day, I sat down and I wrote like 50 pages of Eggs in Purgatory, which turned out to be the first book in that Cackleberry Club series. And now I'm working on book number 8, so
Yeah.
still going strong. My ladies are still, serving eggs in the morning and murder on the side.
I love that. Well, unlike your Thrillsy characters, Afton Tangler, your protagonist in Little Girl Gone, she doesn't hang out in tea shops or have a cozy enterprise. She's a rock climbing, no nonsense detective hopeful, and she's sort of in hot pursuit of kidnappers. I really enjoyed her, and I'm telling you, those last 50 pages were heart-stopping ending for me.
Well, good.
Wow. Do thrillers need more frequent action than cozies, or is it more intense action that sets them apart? How do you pace that?
Oh, I think thrillers require nonstop action. I think in a good thriller, the pacing has to be absolutely brutal, which means you need to keep every scene moving like crazy. The bad guy characters need to be way over the top, too. You need to keep making these guys even more malevolent, vicious, aggressive, as the story unfolds. Then, in your grand finale, in your last couple chapters, the scene where you need to bring them to justice, that always has to have a twist that the reader doesn't see coming. Now, not all thrillers do, but the best ones, you think about the really good ones, the ones that Sanford and Lee Childs write, they always have a bit of a twist at the end.
And Afton
I try and do
Tangler,
that.
Afton Tangler definitely does.
Yeah, and the new one that's coming out on August, The Shadow Girl, that's really got a twist. It's got a couple twists, in fact.
Oh, awesome.
So, I'm excited.
Well, I was wondering if I could impose on you. Would you please treat us to a reading from one of your books?
I'd love to.
Oh, good.
Let's see here. Let me grab my book here. Okay, this is from Little Girl Gone, which is the first book in my Afton Tangler series. It's wintertime, very cold winter, and Afton, who's a family liaison officer with the Minneapolis Police Department, has just slid down a frozen waterfall to take a call from her boss, Donald Thacker. "Listen," Thacker said, "there's been an abduction, a bad one." Afton sucked in air. Bad had to mean a child. "A child?" she asked, and the women around her fell silent. "A baby," Thacker said. "Dear Lord, how old?" 3 months yesterday, Thacker told her. "Taken from?" "Her home in Kenwood," Thacker said. "Last night. Stolen right out of her crib." "Oh, geez," Afton said. "There's a storm going on down here at City Hall," Thacker said, "and your presence is required. So what I want to know is, how soon can you be here?" Afton squinted at her watch, an old Cartier that seemed to perpetually run 5 minutes slow. "Hour and a half if I really crank it." "Good," responded Thacker. "Do it." He was about to hang up when Afton said, "How are the parents holding up?" There was a pause, and then Thacker said, "They're not." So that's just a small part at the very opening of Little Girl Gone.
Wow. Wow. Well, I think that's a perfect intro to our thriller questioner here. Julie, I bet you've got some questions for Laura or for Gerry on the thriller side.
Yes.
I do. I think these probably apply to both sides of the fence here in terms of mystery related fiction. But Wendy and I have spoken in some writing workshops that we've delivered about fundamental differences between conventional mysteries, including the cozy kind, and thriller fiction. And there are many crucial differences in general, including pacing, tone, action, usually explicit violence, and often sex in thrillers, which you never find in cozies, and the big one, which is in mysteries, you never know up front who the guilty party is, and in thrillers, you do. And so my question to you as a writer is, how hard was that bridge to cross for you as an author when you went from more of the cozy philosophy into more of the thriller direction?
Well, actually, it was pretty easy to make that transition from writing mysteries to writing thrillers. For one thing, I'm a big thriller reader, and I've been studying thrillers for a long time. I'm a huge fan, as I just mentioned before, John Sandford, Lee Child, Michael Connelly, those guys. And I always made a practice of reading their thrillers, really all thrillers, twice. The first time I read it through for sheer reading enjoyment. The second time I do it, I try and deconstruct it. That is, I figure out where the first act ends and the second act begins. I figure out how the key plot points are fed in. I look at what tricks the author might have used to amp up the danger. I figure out where the turning points are. When is it darkest before the dawn? When does the hero really doubt himself? The whole key things that go into a thriller. By doing what I call a book autopsy, I kind of taught myself how to construct a thriller. And I think I've done a fairly decent job. The two that I've written. Actually, I've written 2 others, but I never got them published. They were the first 2 I wrote, and I never showed them to anybody. Everybody writes a couple books, and then they don't do anything with them.
That's true. That's very true.
It is. It is.
Yeah. So you took more of an analytical approach, which is wonderful.
Totally. It's like diagramming a sentence, only I diagrammed a book. Remember in 6th and 7th grade you had to diagram sentences?
Oh, yeah.
Same thing. I just pull it apart. I make notes and I make lists and I diagram the book.
That's great.
Yeah.
So as you're writing additional domestic thrillers, how much research do you go into, Gerry, regarding things specifically such as rock climbing and weapons and police procedural details? I know we're wondering if you ever went to a shooting range to fire off a Glock, since that one does feature in one of your books. And I'm sort of tongue-in-cheek chuckling along here because I'm still visualizing my colleague Wendy during her Edmonds Police Department K-9 unit ride-along and some of the things that transpired during that experience.
Yeah, I was awesome. I was awesome out on the streets with Officer Hobbs, the German Shepherd.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. That sounds really neat, yeah. Okay, the truth. Okay, all cards on the table. Truth. Truth is the whole thing. Truth time. I do very little preliminary research. I just kind of trust my own instincts. I think, again, this comes from my advertising marketing background. When we just, ad people, nobody trusts them, right? You don't trust ad people, you don't trust used car salesmen. We just, because we all make things up. Well, it's perfect for an author because you're used to doing it. When I come to a part where I'm writing, where I need to get technical, whether it's guns or rock climbing or the properties of a certain poison, then I do my research. I kind of look it up on the internet and consider it, on-the-job research. I think that a lot of authors have to be careful about putting in too much research. Things like mitochondrial DNA may thrill and fascinate you once you really get into it, but it could be a snooze to readers who really care more about characters and story. I'm reminded of a quote that Elmore Leonard said, and that was, "Leave out the boring parts."
Right.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Right.
And when you start going on about an electron microscope or mitochondrial DNA, those are kind of the boring parts.
Right. Yeah. You may be enamored, but the reader probably not so much. So.
Yeah. Authors love to do research. I know they do. And
they do.
It can be a downfall. Sometimes I hear of authors who do 2 and 3 and 4 months of research. I mean, I could write a book in 2 or 3 or 4 months, let alone do research. Just do it as it comes along.
Okay. And my next question to you, and I know you have a background in advertising and marketing, relates specifically to brand identity, brand confusion, and I think I fully understand why your traditional cozy mysteries are written under the Laura Childs brand and the newer, edgier thrillers featuring Afton Tangler, who, by the way, I love that name, are written under the Gerry Schmitt name. But it's obviously important to avoid brand confusion in the marketplace, whatever your endeavor, whatever you're trying to sell. So I'm wondering, what kind of feedback have you gotten from readers and fans? Are they going along with this? Are they confused?
No, I've gotten extremely positive feedback from my readers. I'm surprised. I thought, well, I'll be lucky if I can carry over 25% of my cozy readers to my thriller, but it seems like a lot more. I mean, maybe 60 to 70%.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It's been fabulous. Now, I wasn't really sure when when the first book came out what would happen. So I did a little pre-marketing. before Little Girl Gone, the very first thriller was published, I put a warning, an actual warning, in the back of 5 of my cozy mysteries. And I literally screamed in this huge black, bold type, a warning to readers, an entirely new series from the author of this book.
Oh, okay.
Exclamation mark, And then I wrote a synopsis that pretty much spelled out what was happening and why this was a very different type of book. And I think I kind of eased the way for writers to make that, or for readers to make that transition.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay,
Yeah.
so you primed the pump, sort of.
I primed the pump. It was pre-marketing, as they call it. Yeah.
Great, okay. And I know you've been at this writing business for a while, Gerry. Are there any favorite writing books that you'd recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, there's a couple that are really, really good. The one that stands out for me is by Stephen King, and it's just called Stephen King on Writing.
Yes.
You probably read it. Yeah, it's very straightforward and helpful. It's almost a memoir of his writing career, but in there are all sorts of little gems that can really help the would-be author or even an author who's been at it for a while. Okay. The other book that's really terrific was written by super agent Donald Moss, and it's called Writing the Breakout Novel.
Yes.
And he gives you these little worksheets at the end of each chapter. They're phenomenal. I used them when I wrote the first thriller. I used them. Yeah, it's just a great book.
It's a great book.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 last questions for my segment for you.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite writing conference of all those that you must have attended at some point in time? And any conferences that you'll be attending in 2017 where readers could see you and have you sign books?
Okay. The best conference I ever attended, the one that literally changed my life, was the Mystery Writers Symposium back in the very late 90s. Okay. A dear friend of mine, Jim Smith, who had been an illustrator, I had hired him to do lots of illustrations for stuff from an ad agency, and he had been Bing Crosby's personal artist and had done all the Marlboro Man illustrations. He knew Mary Higgins Clark really, really well, and he connected me with Mary, okay?
Oh.
So Mary called me and said, come to the Mystery Writers of America Symposium. So I went there. She was heading a panel at that conference, and after her panel was over, at the break, Mary, who was this tiny little dynamo in a Chanel suit, took me by the hand and literally led me around from editor to agent to the president of Random House. I came away that day.
Goodness. Yeah.
I came away that day with 4 different agents who wanted to represent my work. God bless Mary Higgins Clark.
Wow.
What a wonderful story.
Yeah, she's helped a lot of people get started. But that was just above and beyond. It was just amazing. She is a sweetheart. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to launch into my segment now, and I'm rereading a helpful book called The First 50 Pages by Jeff Gerke. Highly recommended if you're writing or editing a novel, entering a fiction contest, or submitting to agents. And I spoke in one of our last podcasts a little bit about how a writer must make the lead character reliable, likable, and even vulnerable, and how to go about doing that. Jeff talks in his book about how the writer has 2 big jobs. Number 1, engaging the reader, something that Gerry does so exceptionally well. And number 2, setting up the story so that the rest of it works correctly. You need compelling characters who capture the reader's attention and the skills to build a solid foundation for the rest of the novel. Again, something Gerry or Laura does wonderfully well. I've been thinking about cozy mysteries a lot lately, and I blame Wendy for this because I write thrillers, but I've decided that thriller writers often engage readers by shifting immediately into high gear using adrenaline and violence and almost frenetic motion. And I think about all those chase scenes and the weapons and things blowing up. Whereas cozy writers engage readers by using comfort, but in a highly strategic way. That strong sense of place, the small tight-knit community, the details, the foibles, and the character insights that make us relax a little and think, I know someone like this, or I really like this person, until we figure out that they killed their terrible boss. But whatever you like to read or write, think about these two writers' tasks as you pick up that next book.
That's awesome. I'm glad I've got you thinking about cozies a little bit. Well, I wanted to talk about why are we driven to sleuth? Mysteries are 21% of all book sales, outpaced only by the romance genre. And there's clues that lead to several theories why mysteries are so popular. Do we read them for the rush? Maybe for the same reason we go to horror movies and ride roller coasters, to feel the thrill of fear and to get the adrenaline rush of a dangerous situation without having a high risk of personal danger. Let those fictional characters get hurt, not us. Or do we read it for the, that could be me? So quoting Walter Mosley, who's the author of the highly acclaimed Easy Rawlins mystery series. So quoting him, I think that people feel extraordinarily vulnerable in this society and this culture. And one of the reasons that people are so interested in crime, true and imagined, is it's something they're worried about. It's something that they want to solve. They want to know, could that happen to me? And they want to know, how can I make it so it doesn't happen to me? So people read and watch as a matter of survival. You know, the zebra is always interested in how the lion kills, which is a great way to end the quote.
Good one.
A person can extrapolate this theory beyond that feeling, what it's like to be the sleuth. Is there a morbid curiosity about what would it like to be the villain? There's a beautiful scene in Moby Dick where the cook is watching the sharks, and the sharks are eating food, but then all of a sudden they start eating each other. And the cook starts to preach to the sharks, and he says, angels are just sharks who have learned to control their appetites. And if you sharks, if you control your appetites, you will become angels. Or do we read it for the why? In fiction, justice is served and the results are neatly tied up, unlike real life. So mystery novels create order out of disorder and the righting of a wrong. So it's a refreshing antidote to the real world. And unlike real life, so often, in fiction, you get to hear why the crime is committed. Or do we like mysteries because we get to solve the puzzle? It's the opportunity to pit your wits against action and the psychology of characters. So the appeal is the intellectual challenge to solve it before the detective, like a game, and we all like games. It's part of human nature. We don't like unanswered questions or unresolved conflicts, and death is the ultimate mystery we're enthralled with. Or do we read for the characters, especially the hero? Readers form a strong emotional attachment with their favorite detective or sleuth, especially in a series. Seeing characters reacting to the pressure of a mystery can be so revealing of human nature, and the heroic figure offers a model and a blueprint of character for readers to try on for their own concerns in life. I think a good test for mystery writers is finding out what mysteries engage their characters. If it's a mystery that characters care about and the audience cares about the characters, then they'll also care about the mystery. Do we get these things in other genres? Yes, some of them. But mystery's focus is on all these things, and at the core of it is a question. And do you get interested when a question is waiting to be answered? Why are we driven to sleuth? What's your theory? That's rhetorical. Okay, well, Gerry is one of those cozy writers who treats us to extra fun. And at the end of her books, she gives us a sampling of tips. So as a nod to the Tea Shop Mysteries recipes and teas that are included at the end of the books in that series, for this episode, we're going to pair something to sip or nibble while enjoying the books that we're recommending. So Julie, you're up first. What do you recommend?
Great. Well, the book I'm recommending, it's Orphan X by Greg Hurwitz, and it's about as uncozy as you can possibly get. So I'm pairing it with a lovely and seductively assertive Syrah called Lake County Writer's Block, produced by OMS Group of Kelseyville, California. The label features William Shakespeare, pen in hand, a glass of wine nearby, and there's poetry on the back of the label as well. And it would go really well with a very nice room temperature Stilton. But the book itself is by thriller author Greg Hurwitz, and it's a New York Times bestseller. You just know it's going to be an interesting ride, because that's what a thriller should be, an interesting, wild ride. When the author dedicates the book to all the bad boys and girls, rule breakers and vigilantes, and then lists Sam Spade, Spencer, Jason Byrne, Robin Hood, Ellen Ripley, Arya Stark, Jack Bauer, Repairman Jack, Sherlock Holmes, and a host of others for being so wicked that they're good. This book is the origin story of Evan Smoke, the Nowhere Man. He's a dangerous man, one with lethal skills, talents, unusual resources, and a singular mission to help those with nowhere else to turn. We learn he was raised to be Orphan X, part of the covert orphan program designed to create the perfect assassins with complete governmental deniability. Years later, he breaks with this program and disappears, creating a new persona, one with a mission to help the desperate instead of doing harm. He takes on a new mission, helping a young woman whose little sister is being groomed by a sexual predator, a predator who happens to be a powerful cop in Los Angeles. He follows through, doing what he must. I won't give away the plot, but then he realizes someone is targeting him. Quickly, he learns it must be someone from his past, from the orphan program, which he thought was disbanded. He always knew there were other orphans out there, somewhere, but now they're coming after him. I won't ruin it for you, but the plotting and pacing is relentless, which keeps the pages turning. The book is filled with seamless details on weapons, tactical moves, and threads of some of his earlier missions as the Nowhere Man, along with flashbacks of his training as Orphan X. You think he'd be just another cold, calculating anti-hero, but the author makes him surprisingly relatable and even vulnerable in spots. One of the joys of reading this book is you keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, and when it does, you still didn't see it coming. Robert Cray called this book the most exciting thriller since The Bourne Identity, and Hurwitz is the author of numerous thrillers, as well as screenwriter, TV producer, and comic book author, and his skills as screenwriter really show. And he's now writing a screenplay adaptation of Orphan X for Warner Brothers, which has been optioned by Bradley Cooper. So we hope we have a film to look forward to in the future. And over to you, Wendy.
Well, my book recommendation is Storm Prey by John Sanford. And my pairing recommendation is Drayton Spine Tingling Ice Angels Drink. Look for the recipe in Laura Child's book Dragonwell Dead, along with Killer Blood Orange Scones. Look for this recipe in Laura Child's book Blood Orange Brewing. So why a spine-tingling drink? Because at 4:45 a.m., 3 men sneak into a hospital unnoticed, burst through the hospital pharmacy door, and clean the place out of drugs so they can sell them on the street and personally consume. As they rush out to the garage and drive out, they're seen by a surgeon arriving. I mean seen. Now it festers with them. How well can she identify them? Do they need to eliminate her? And to raise the stakes, she's the wife of investigator Lucas Davenport, who won't leave her protection and catching the bad guys up to just the police. This author writes so stealthily into the reader's subconscious, pushing that spine-tingling suspense as the robbers hunt her down and determine their options for her murder. And why is it an Ice Angels drink? Come on, this is bitterly cold Minnesota in January. And how interesting is the way this extreme season works its way into the plot. Why Killer Blood Orange Scones? Set your cozy vulnerabilities aside. This is a violent group. and the author spares few details. You get to see life from the police and investigators' point of view, from the den of thieves' point of view, and glimpses into the view from the victims. Yes, that's plural, victims. On the side of the law, there's some friction between professionals on their methods and some interesting twists with personal relationships. And on the thieves' side, I was really fascinated. These people are not masterminds, far from it, and the drugs do nothing to enhance their mental skills. Yet they manage to pull off major crimes and to wreak a lot of destruction. They have their evil victories and certainly keep the law playing defense in their investigation. Most impressive with this author, John Sanford, is not just the exciting action, keeping the invigorating pace throughout the book, but two other factors give the thriller real depth. The first is in the characters' relationships with each other. So often I'm interested in how I interact with a book's characters, but in this book I really felt I was watching well-established relationships between characters. Lucas Davenport, investigator, and his wife exude a real sense of each other and of shared past experiences that are hinted at. This is so important in a series that the characters not only grow individually, but in the relationships they need to grow either together or visibly apart. I got a real sense of that with so many of the characters, the police officers, investigators, hospital staff, because there's a thrilling subplot as well with the surgeon wife's intense patient case at the hospital. And finally, between the robbers/murderers, it's fascinating seeing the bonds grow and also become stressed between them. Is there loyalty among thieves? Some of them have a lengthy friendship together, and some are even siblings. Second is the skillful writing that conveys a sense of getting in over your head, then a building panic, and then reacting in a way to try and fix unforeseen problems, which then snowballs into more problems to fix. That's really intense writing. This adds to the spine-tingling suspense because the bad guy's reactions, while somehow sickly logical, are also unpredictable and horrifying to watch. No wonder the investigator and police have such a tough time stopping them. Gerry, I'm going to ask now, does your book recommendation take us further into the cold or warm us? And what's your pairing?
Well, my book recommendation takes us to chilly, rainy London. The book is The Silkworm by Robert Galbraith, which is the pen name for J.K. Rowling. The Silkworm is the second book in the Cormoran Strike mysteries. Now, Strike is a crusty, one-legged detective who's clever, tough, and pretty much always on the fine edge of financial disaster. So I would definitely suggest pairing The Silkworm with an Earl Grey tea. Earl Grey is a lovely mellow tea. It carries a hint of bergamot oil. Of course, Cormoran Strike, being a somewhat portly male detective, would probably take his tea along with a very hearty sandwich. I would guess English cheddar and ham with some mustard. And then I'd also recommend a strawberry scone with some clotted cream. Now, of course, I always give recipes at the end of all my books, so I'll give you a quick tip on clotted cream. It is made by heating full cream cow's milk and then letting it slowly cool to form clots. And I must say, this is an acquired taste.
Well, this sounds good. Now I've got some good books to add to my list and some good recipes to try. And guess what? This is our Sweet 16 podcast. Hooray! So from experiment to 16 podcast episodes done and more to come. How sweet it is. But instead of popping the champagne, and as a special gift inspired by the works of our guest, Laura Childs, our local Edmonds, Washington tea shop, Treasures and Teas owner and tea sommelier, Phyllis Carlton, has created a special mystery tea blends in honor of the Sweet 16 Mystery Podcast. She's got 2 custom first taste blends for our listeners to sip while listening to Kendall and Cooper or while reading their favorite mysteries. They're called the Queen's Mystery 2 and the Evening Shadow. So here's a little recording that we made when we taste tested, Julie and I, with Phyllis, and she will again reveal the names and some essential ingredients of these two blends. We're here at Treasures and Teas in Edmonds, Washington. So excited to have taste tested wonderful teas. Phyllis has developed some custom blends just for us with our mystery readers and listeners in mind. And it was hard, but we've chosen two to celebrate our Sweet 16 podcast with Laura Childs. Didn't we do good, Julie?
We did an exceptional job, and we're here today in the store with Phyllis Carlton. And actually, I'm looking across and seeing a wall display of 200 jars of tea. And some of those ingredients went into these wonderful custom blends that Phyllis developed specifically for our mystery readers and listeners. And I won't give away all the secret ingredients, but I know Phyllis is going to tell us a little bit about some of the high notes and low notes in these blends. And I guess you could call her a tea sommelier, but I think I'm going to call her the tea whisperer.
Oh, I love it. Thank you. Okay, we have the Queen's Mystery 2. That's a smooth black tea with just a little bit of oolong. You'll pick up notes of peach and apricot and just a little bit of jasmine. And then we have the Evening Shadow tea, which is a rooibos based tea with a bit of sweet orange, chocolate, and chai flavors. With a real good palate, you might even pick up just a little bit of hazelnut to round it out. And then we'll be working on a special mystery tea coming up in June, and I won't give away any more than that.
But look forward to it. It's tangy, refreshing, very colorful, and I won't say more about it right now. I don't want to give away the whole formulation here. But we're enjoying looking around at the shop, and a lot of beach-related and pirate-related memorabilia and fun decorative accessories. And anything else you'd like to add, Wendy?
Well, I'm just going to add that I am a regular at this Treasures and Teas shop. I love all the teas, and so I'm encouraging all of the mystery lovers to come in and try these new blends, or any of the teas here, actually. Or if you can't make it into Edmonds, Washington, to Treasures and Teas, then I encourage you to call on the phone for an order $25 or more. Call 425-771-2601. Thanks so much, Phyllis, for a really good time.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you. It was lovely.
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to that. Aren't independent tea shops a treat?
They truly are.
They're wonderful. They're little jewels. They really are.
And that's a wrap for our very special 16th episode of Kendall and Cooper Talk Mysteries. Interviewing Laura Childs / Gerry Schmitt has been a dream come true for my colleague Wendy and a complete pleasure for me. We're anxiously awaiting her next book titled Shadow Girl, which comes out in August. Thanks for listening. Keep reading and keep writing.